Okay, let's try some search expressions, and these are taken right out of the help file. If you want to follow along with me, I am right where it says how to search on a single word, a group of words or a phrase. And I'm going to be taking these examples one at a time, and I may add a few little extra searches in here because it's easy to do, once you get started with these searches, to start getting off on a tangent and trying other things, and so that's kind of what I want you to do. So, let's get started. The first one is to search for a specific word, and the word here is seek, and you just press enter and you get a listing of all verses in the entire scriptures where the word seek is found. Now there's 333 items. And so obviously this is way too many, and we also see a problem down here. I'm scrolling down in the Book of Mormon and some of the verses are too long and they don't fit. And we have lectures. Those verses are also too long. We're going to talk about how to fix that as we go along. But, right now, the goal is just to do some searches. Okay, so let's try multiple words. Seek, find, knock, open. There has to be a space between the words, and you also have to use whole words. If you want to use partial words, you have to put an asterisk at the end of a word, but we just want whole words for now. So, here's all the verses where these four words all appear in the same verse. Now these words don't have to all appear in the same order. They just all have to be present, but they're all there. Seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Say you want to search one word or the other. We'll do that. The word banner and the word ensign are synonyms in the Bible. It's the same word in Hebrew, translated differently in English. So, we'll talk about that next. Just clear the search, and now we're going to do a search for banner or ensign. Is it ensign or ensign? My father was an ensign in the Navy. He wasn't an ensign in the Navy. Anyway, okay, here we have all kinds of verses with banner or ensign. Okay, here in Psalm chapter 60 verse 4, we have got banner. Down here, Isaiah 5:26, we have ensign. People have been requesting a way to automatically search for synonyms. I haven't figured out a way to do that yet. But if you know that two words are synonyms, you can ask for one word or the other. Okay, here's where we have to search for an exact phrase, grace for grace. You just type in grace for grace. You're going to get 60 items like if I have found grace in thy sight, and the Lord said to Moses, I will do that thing with that was spoken, for thou hast found grace in my sight. But that's not what we're looking for. And plus, we have to go through 60 items. But what we want is the exact term grace for grace, so we put this in quotation marks and do another search. By the way, to do a search, you can hit the search button, you can also press enter, which is probably the easiest. And then also press Ctrl+S. Okay, so here we have all received of his fullness grace for grace. We got that in the Gospel of John, we've got it in Helaman, we've got it in section 93. The Doctrine Covenants. Now there's also the phrase grace to grace. I don't know if you knew that or not. Section 93 mentions grace for grace and also grace to grace. I just thought of something I want to try, I don't know if it's going to work or not. Let's try substituting an asterisk in here. Okay, here this is interesting. Zechariah is using the two-word grace together in an expression. Now you don't have to worry about punctuation because the database only searches for full words. It doesn't search for punctuation marks, or uppercase. Here's something we can try. You can say grace for grace or grace to grace. You can take two exact phrases and you can put the word or in between them. These are all the same verses we had before plus the grace to grace verse. It's always a good idea to check. And if you don't get as many searches as you expect, or if you get too many, you might want to check your search and check your results and see why you didn't get what you expected. Okay. Now here's another one. Receive or received. Instead of all that extra typing, there's another easier way to do that. You can just do this. Just say receive, followed by an asterisk. I don't want to look through 908 items. That's way too many. This is why we have the filter text box. We'll be talking about that in a second. Wait. Here's a good place where we can use it. What do we receive? It says we receive or received of His fullness or the fullness. So, we could type that down in the filter box. We could filter by fullness. The purpose of the filter is to filter the results. The results are still saved in the program, but they're filtered out and hidden so you only see part of the results. So, let's filter it and say received His fullness. There's one thing you notice if you study the scriptures a lot, and that is there's some words which are spelled funny in the scriptures, and the word fullness is one of them. You can spell it with one L or two L's. If you want to know which is the one used most commonly, it is the one with one L. The only place the two L's is used is in the lectures on faith. And the reason I know this is because of this program. I decided one day to look at that. I thought, wait a minute. I don't spell fullness with one L. But some scriptures do. Is it just Joseph Smith? So, anyway, we have His fullness. And now it's still found 908 items. It's showing 15 of them and 893 of them are hidden, which means they're sitting in the background. We can call them forth anytime we want just by changing the filter. Okay, so, we've got His Old Testament fullness. Having received of His fullness and His grace. But what about the fullness? We could put that in our filter too. To apply a filter, there's 3 ways to do that. You can press the filter button, or you can press the Enter key, or you can press Ctrl+F. I find the Enter key is usually the fastest and easiest. Okay, so here we've got 35 items. Either received of the fullness or received of His fullness. Okay. Clear the searches and do this. Now, let me illustrate something I talked about a minute ago. We'll look for the word fullness with 2 L's. The only place you see it is in the lectures on faith. And there are 15 places. If you type fullness with 1 L, you get 117 places including the King James Bible. So, that's just a little thing to remember. As if things weren't bad enough, don't forget the British spelling of words like color, labor, and honor. In the Bible, they end in OUR, but in the Book of Mormon and D&C, they end in OR. Okay, now, here's another one. Kind of a little game you can play to learn about the scriptures, the phrase "and it came to pass." It appears 1,525 times in the scriptures. The purpose of this study is not to look at every single reference but to see how common this phrase really is. And also show you some of the filtering techniques that we have. If you want to see where it says "and it came to pass" in the Old Testament, you can filter O.T. Everything that's in the database has a volume, a book and a verse in the grid, so you can search by any of those. You wouldn't want to search by Old Testament or OT, but you can filter your results by specifying OT in the filter box. Same with any book. You probably don't want to see all of Matthew, but, if you searched for faith, and wanted to see where the word appeared in Matthew, you could put faith in the search and Matthew in the filter. You could put faith Matthew or faith and Matthew in the search. Under either method, you get 14 verses returned. The idea is not to get the exact, perfect query the first time, but to play around and experiment, and search the scriptures like you've never been able to do before. It's easy to get distracted, so now, back to Genesis. If you want to filter, you search by Genesis. For example, you could spell out the full word Genesis. If you want a specific verse in Genesis, then you could just say GEN for the abbreviation for the verse. For example, Genesis chapter 4, you'd say GEN space 4, all in quotes. Now, I also want to point out that if you notice that there's a tool tip on these verses, which is kind of handy for some of the longer verses. We'll discuss this later on. Okay, so, if you want to see where this is in the Old Testament, O-T. And the reason why you put that dash in there is because there's a lot of words that normally contain the letters OT or NT for New Testament, and to make it easier for the search engines to distinguish between those, we use O-T and N-T. Just so there's no confusion. So, we filter "and it came to pass" by OT. We got 336 items. I never knew that phrase was even used in the Old Testament. Check the New Testament NT. There are 60 items. There's the one we all know about, the one in Luke in the Christmas story, and it came to pass. Where is it? There is something about all the world being taxed. We're going to tax the whole world. So, we know what's in the New Testament. We know what's in Luke, and we know it's about being taxed. This is what we put in our filter. The phrase "and it came to pass" appears 60 times in the New Testament. But, how about the Book of Mormon? It took a little while because the filter had to go through 1,500 items manually. It didn't use the database, which is optimized for fast searching but just looking through the memory of the program. In most cases, the filter doesn't have to be fast because the database search query doesn't always return 1,500 items, nor do we want it to. Now we search in the D and C. There were 4 in the D and C. How about the pearl of great price? P-G-P. There are 53 items in the pearl of great price. Okay, next search. We're back to our banner or ensign. If you don't want to spell out banner or ensign, or maybe you don't know how to spell it, you can just type out BAN asterisk or ENS asterisk. So, here you get your results, 237 items. Banner or ensign. We haven't talked about this yet, but back to the word seek. There's a lot of them in the scriptures. You've got 338 items. Say, you want the word seek but you don't want verses that use the word find. Let's do the search for seek not find, and we get 315 matches. Okay, we've narrowed down a little bit. Okay, say we want seek or find. We already talked about seek and find. You can say seek. Okay, you can say seek and find, or you can say seek, find. In the search box, and is implied. It doesn't matter as you code it in the search box or not. Suppose you want where Moses said either seek or find. So, you put parentheses around this to group it. So, seek or find and Moses. Now notice also you don't have to use uppercase. There's one place where Moses said seek or find. I suppose you could say not Moses. You can say something like not Moses and not Jesus. I don't know why, but I'm just trying to illustrate. So, there's the word seek and there's a word find. Okay, let's see, here's one more. Seek, find, knock. The word and is implied. This works like a Google search. Pretty much if you're familiar with doing complex Google searches, this should be pretty much second nature to you. But here's a verse draw nearer to me. You don't want that one. So, you say not draw and the filter drops off that verse. This is a way of cutting down on the amount of data that you'll see. This database contains the Bible, Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, Doctrine and Covenants, and Lectures on Faith. Altogether there are over 40,000 verses or paragraphs. Each one displays as a row in the grid. It's got the volume, the book, chapter, verse, and then the actual text. And then we're going to talk about your comments in a little bit too. But there's 40,000 rows, and the database has to search them all. So, you want to eliminate as many of these searches as possible that are extraneous information. Your biggest problem is not the speed of the search but the volume of the data that you return. Do you know anything about Zechariah or Zephaniah? If you're like me, you probably don't, but we're going to discover a few things about them. We search for Zechariah. I didn't put an asterisk. I actually wanted to see what would happen if you just say Zech. You're going to get everything in the book of Zechariah, because Zech is the abbreviation. If you type Zechariah, you're going to get not only the book of Zechariah, but you're going to get every place he's mentioned in the Bible. This is a problem you have to be aware of, when there is a person and also a book named after that person. There's no book of Jesus. So, we always know that Jesus is a reference to Jesus. We're talking about the man, but when you run your names like Nephi and Alma, you want to be able to distinguish between the book and the man, and there's a way to do that. But back to Zechariah. If you want all instances of Zechariah and Zephaniah, you can do this, Zechariah or Zephaniah. If you don't want to spell out the names, you can use asterisk. If you type in the word Genesis, you're going to get the entire book of Genesis that fast, which is pretty amazing. But you don't want that, so you type in GEN, which is equally fast, but you're still getting the entire book of Genesis because it searches for the word GEN. Now, I know that's not a word, but the database considers it a word because it's a bunch of letters grouped together with a space after it. So, what do you do when you want to find, like say Genesis chapter 20? If you said this, Gen 20, you're going to get every verse that's in Genesis and contains the number 20, which is kind of a hodgepodge. Not useful. Type in Gen 20, with the colon. Okay. Say you want to study, I don't know why, but say you want to study about a man by the name of Abimelech? He was a king who lived at the time of Abraham. If you want to do that, you can do the search, you could say, ABIM. If you don't feel like spelling Abimelech or you don't know how, you could say ABIM down here in the filter. This gives you everywhere the man is mentioned in chapter 20 of Genesis, but say you want to know where everywhere he's mentioned in all of Genesis. Type ABIM asterisk in the search and GEN in the filter. Gen is one word. We've done keyword searches, but what about searching when you know the chapter and verse? We'll get into more detail later, but let's do a simple example now. You've got the man Alma in the book of Alma. Search for Alma 60-7 in quotes. If you want all of Alma, chapter 60, type Alma 60, with the colon and the quotes. Some books, especially in the Bible, have the abbreviation, rather than the full name, for the book as part of the verse. To get a specific chapter or verse, you have to use the abbreviation. For example, 1JN3. If you have trouble remembering those abbreviations, we have a little table here and we'll spend some more time talking about this later. There are other ways to mark verses, or a range of verses. This is coming up next.